Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a man who felt invisible. His name was Leo. Leo lived in a small apartment in a busy, noisy city. Every morning, his life began the same way. The alarm clock would scream at 7:00 a.m., and Leo would press the snooze button. Not once, not twice, but 5 times. When he finally crawled out of bed at 7:45, he felt defeated before the day even began. His room was a mess. Clothes were on the floor. Empty coffee cups were on the desk. And his bed was a mountain of tangled blankets. Leo would look at himself in the mirror and sigh. He wanted a better life. He dreamed of being successful and healthy. But those dreams felt like giant mountains, and Leo felt too small to climb them. Maybe tomorrow, he would whisper to his reflection. Tomorrow, I will change everything. Tomorrow, I will be a new man. But tomorrow never seemed to come. He was waiting for a miracle, a giant leap that would transform his world in a single day. He didn't know that miracles are not usually big events. They are small, quiet choices made in the dark. On this specific Monday morning, something in the air felt different. The sun was hitting a pile of dust on his floor, and for the first time, Leo didn't look away. He realized that if he couldn't control his room, he could never control his life. Before we see the first small thing Leo decided to do, welcome to the English Oasis. This is your quiet space to relax and improve your English naturally through stories that touch the heart. If you want to grow your fluency one step at a time, please subscribe and join our community. Now, let's go back to Leo's messy room, where a very small revolution was about to start. Leo reached out his hand and touched his messy blanket. He didn't know it yet, but this simple movement was the beginning of a journey that would change everything. Leo was a prisoner of his own big dreams. Like many people, he spent hours scrolling through social media, looking at people who seemed to have it all. He saw entrepreneurs making millions and travelers visiting exotic islands, and polyglots who spoke 5 languages perfectly. Every time he saw them, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. It was the pain of inadequacy. In his notebook, Leo had a list titled The New Me. The list was filled with massive goals. Become a manager in 6 months, run a marathon, and master English by summer. But when he looked at these goals, he felt overwhelmed. They were so large that he didn't know where to start. Because he couldn't see the finish line, he refused to take the first step. This was the trap of the big jump. Leo believed that change had to be dramatic. He thought that if he didn't spend 3 hours at the gym, his workout was a failure. He thought that if he didn't study English for an entire afternoon, it wasn't worth opening the book. Consequently, he did nothing at all. He spent his evenings on the sofa, eating junk food and watching movies, feeling more disappointed with himself every day. I am just not a disciplined person, he would tell himself. He believed that discipline was a gift you were born with, not a skill you could build. He felt stuck in a grey cycle of work, sleep, and regret. His energy was low, and his self-esteem was even lower. One evening, while he was searching for a motivational video to watch, he stumbled upon a simple sentence. If you want to change the world, start by making your bed. At first, Leo laughed. It sounded too simple. It sounded almost insulting. How can a blanket change my career? He muttered. But then he looked around his apartment. It was a reflection of his mind, chaotic, unfinished, and messy. He realized that his discomfort wasn't coming from his lack of $1 million. It was coming from his lack of control over his own environment. But this quiet discomfort was about to become something much heavier. He had to decide his path. Would he keep waiting for a giant miracle, or would he try something so small it felt invisible? Tuesday morning arrived. The alarm rang, and for the first time in months, Leo didn't wait for the 5th snooze. He sat up, his head heavy, and looked at his messy bed. He remembered the sentence from the night before. Reluctantly, he stood up and began to pull the sheets straight. It took him exactly 60 seconds. He smoothed out the wrinkles in the blanket and placed his pillow neatly at the top. When he finished, he stood back and looked at it. For the first time in a long time, one small corner of his world was in perfect order. It felt strange. It was a tiny victory, but a victory nonetheless. However, the skeptical voice in his head was still loud. "So what?" the voice whispered. "You made your bed. You are still in the same job. You still haven't reached your big goals. This is a waste of time." Leo felt a wave of doubt. He almost wanted to mess up the bed again, just to prove that it didn't matter. He realized that his biggest mistake wasn't being lazy. It was being impatient. He wanted the result without the process. He wanted the forest, but he didn't want to plant a single seed. But instead of listening to the voice, he made another choice. He walked to the kitchen and grabbed a piece of paper. He wrote down 4 things. Make the bed. No snooze button. Walk for 10 minutes. Learn 5 English words. He stared at the list. It looked pathetic. It looked like a list for a child, not a grown man who wanted to change his life. But then he remembered how many times he had failed at the big dreams. Maybe the child's path was the only way forward. That afternoon, after work, he put on his sneakers. He didn't go to the gym for a heavy 2-hour workout. He simply walked around the block for 10 minutes. While he walked, he didn't listen to a complex business podcast. He just listened to the sound of his own breathing. When he returned, he opened his English book. He didn't try to read a whole chapter. He chose 5 simple words: consistency, discipline, resilience, habit, and growth. He wrote them down 10 times each. By the end of the evening, he felt a tiny spark of energy. It wasn't a fire yet, just a spark. But he was afraid. He was afraid that tomorrow he would wake up and forget why he was doing this. He thought he still had time to fix things, but he was wrong. The real test of his discipline was about to arrive with the sunrise. Wednesday was different. The initial excitement of the first day had vanished. When the alarm rang at 7:00 a.m., The room felt colder, and Leo's body felt heavier. This was the moment of truth. His brain, programmed by years of habit, screamed at him to press the snooze button. "Just 10 more minutes," his mind whispered. "One small sleep won't hurt your progress." Leo's finger hovered over the phone screen. He knew that if he pressed that button today, he would press it tomorrow and the day after. He realized that the snooze button was more than just a function on his phone. It was a symbol of his old life, a life of procrastination and broken promises. With a sudden, sharp movement, he pushed the blanket aside and swung his feet onto the floor. The cold air hit his skin like a shock, but he didn't go back. He stood up immediately. He had reached the point of no return. By conquering the first 10 seconds of his day, he felt like a soldier winning the first battle of a war. He made his bed with military precision. Then he sat down at his desk and looked at the 5 English words from yesterday. He didn't just read them. He used them to describe his situation. "I am being consistent," he said aloud. This is a new habit. The real shift wasn't in his environment, but in his identity. For the first time, Leo didn't see himself as a failure trying to change. He saw himself as a disciplined person who was practicing. However, the world outside was waiting to test him. A long day at the office was ahead, filled with stressful meetings and rude colleagues. In the past, he would have used a bad day as an excuse to skip his 10-minute walk and his English study. He thought he could negotiate with his goals. He was wrong. He was about to learn that discipline doesn't care about your feelings. As he walked out the door, he made a silent vow. No matter what happened today, the list must be finished. He was no longer waiting for a miracle. He was building one. By the second week, the novelty had evaporated. Making the bed was now a chore. The 10-minute walk felt monotonous, and the 5 English words seemed insignificant. This was the trial of the invisible. Leo looked at his life and felt frustrated. He wasn't a manager yet. He wasn't fluent in English. He hadn't lost weight. "I've been doing this for 15 days. Why don't I see a giant transformation?" One rainy Tuesday, the temptation to quit was overwhelming. He was exhausted from work, and his legs ached. He sat on his sofa, staring at his sneakers. He realized that the biggest trial wasn't a sudden disaster, but the feeling that his small wins were meaningless. He felt like he was throwing tiny pebbles into a vast ocean, expecting to build an island. But instead of stopping, Leo decided to change his perspective. He stopped looking at the mountain and started looking at the pebbles. He noticed small, subtle changes. His apartment didn't smell like old dust anymore. It felt like a home. He didn't feel foggy in the morning because he stopped hitting the snooze button. When he opened an English article, he recognized words like resilience and consistency. He was learning the most important lesson, the law of compounding. He realized that success isn't a 100% jump in one day. It is being 1% better than yesterday. He forced himself to tie his laces. He walked for 10 minutes in the rain. He learned 5 new words: endurance, compound, incremental, progress, and persistence. He was no longer fighting for a big result. He was fighting for the streak. He didn't want to break the chain of 15 days. He thought he was just practicing habits, but he was actually rebuilding his broken self-trust. Little did he know, a moment was coming at work that would prove his power. The real test came on a hectic Thursday at the office. Leo's department was in a state of chaos. A major international client had sent an urgent request. The manager was looking for someone to handle a difficult English presentation. Usually, Leo would hide in the back, terrified of making a mistake. He used to think, "I'm not good enough for this." But something had changed inside him. The 20 days of making his bed and waking up early had created strength. He looked at the chaos and felt a strange sense of composure. Suddenly, the manager turned to him. "Leo, everyone else is busy. Can you review these English documents and explain the main points to the client in the meeting?" In the past, Leo would have panicked, but today he thought about his 5-word daily habit. He thought about the discipline it took to walk in the rain. He stood up, adjusted his shirt, and said, "Yes, I can handle it." During the meeting, Leo felt a surge of adrenaline. When he spoke, the words didn't feel like a struggle. He used the word resilience to describe the project's progress. He explained the incremental steps they were taking to fix the errors. He wasn't perfect, but he was confident. He had kept his promises to himself every morning. He no longer feared keeping a promise to his boss. The client was impressed, not just by his English, but by his clarity. When the meeting ended, his manager smiled. "Good job. Leo, I didn't know you had this much focus." Leo returned to his desk, but he didn't feel arrogant. He felt a deep sense of validation. The climax of his story wasn't a movie-like miracle. It was the moment he realized that his small daily wins had built a foundation of steel. He wasn't a loser anymore. He was a man who finished what he started. He realized that the 1-0-minute walk had taught him to endure. The 5 words a day had given him a voice. And the bed? Making the bed had taught him that order creates peace. Success is built quietly. 30 days had passed since that fateful Monday morning. Leo woke up, and before his brain could offer a single excuse, his feet had already touched the floor. There was no struggle, no hesitation, and no regretful snooze buttons. Discipline was no longer a painful effort. It had become an instinct. His apartment looked completely different now. The bed was always made, the desk was organized, and the mirror was covered in English sticky notes. Leo looked at his reflection and smiled. He didn't see a millionaire, but he saw a man with integrity. He had kept a promise to himself for 30 consecutive days. His confidence had spread to every corner of his life. He began to engage in English conversations with foreign colleagues without the paralyzing fear of being judged. His English wasn't perfect, but it was fluent because he had stopped demanding perfection from himself. He understood that progress comes from accumulating mistakes. His colleagues began to notice his new energy. Friends asked him for his secret to changing his life. Leo just laughed and said, "I just made my bed." They thought he was joking, but he knew it was the absolute truth. Making the bed was the first win that gave him the momentum to conquer bigger challenges. Leo realized a vital truth. Life does not change through giant, dramatic leaps. It changes through quiet, small wins. Every time he made his bed, he cast a vote. He no longer felt like a failure trying to climb a mountain. He felt like a builder constructing a fortress, one brick at a time. He finally understood the true meaning of success. It is not a destination. It is a process repeated with devotion. Let's look back at Leo's journey. In the beginning, Leo was stuck in a cycle of procrastination. He had massive goals, but because they felt too big, he did nothing. He felt like a failure every time he hit the snooze button in his messy room. He was waiting for a big jump that never happened. The turning point was when he decided to focus on small daily wins. He started with the simplest task, making his bed. Then he added more rules. No more snooze buttons, a 1-0-minute walk, and learning exactly 5 English words every day. At first, these actions felt insignificant and even boring. However, through consistency, Leo began to build self-trust. He learned that discipline is a muscle. By the time a big challenge arrived at work, he was ready. His daily habits had given him the mental resilience and the vocabulary to speak confidently. After 30 days, Leo didn't just have a clean room. He had a new identity. He proved that success is not built by luck or giant leaps. It is built quietly, one brick at a time, through the power of small, repetitive actions. He realized that if you can win your morning, you can win your life. For a long time, I lived in a state of constant regret. I used to wake up feeling like a loser before the sun was even high. My big dreams were actually my biggest enemies because they made me feel worthless. I was waiting for a miracle to save me, but my room stayed messy and my English stayed broken. Everything changed when I stopped trying to be perfect. I started trying to be consistent. I'll never forget the first morning I made my bed. It felt silly, and I even felt a bit embarrassed. But as I smoothed the sheets, it dawned on me that for the first time in years, I had actually finished a task I set for myself. I found myself fighting a battle every morning with that snooze button. But every time I put my feet on the floor immediately, I felt a tiny surge of power. My 1-0-minute walks weren't about fitness. They were about keeping a promise. My 5 words a day weren't about being a poet. They were about building a bridge. When I stood in that meeting room at work, speaking English to a client, I realized that I wasn't nervous because I had been practicing discipline in the dark. I had already won 20 battles at home, so that meeting was just the 21st. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a man waiting for luck. I see a man who builds his own luck, one small win at a time. I'm not perfect, but I am moving, and that makes all the difference. We have travelled with Leo from a messy room to a place of quiet confidence. His story reminds us that we don't need to change everything in one day. We only need to change our next 10 minutes. If you are feeling overwhelmed by your goals, or if progress is slow, remember Leo. Don't look at the giant mountain. Just look at the first step. Make your bed, learn your 5 words, and be proud of that small victory. Over time, those tiny ripples will become a powerful wave. As we finish tonight, I want to leave you with a thought. Success is not a giant leap. It is a long chain of small wins. Thank you for choosing the English Oasis as your quiet place to learn. We believe that your English fluency is built just like Leo's confidence. One story, one sentence, and one day at a time. If you found this story helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. It tells us that you want more stories like this one. Before you go, I have a small challenge for you. What is one small win you will achieve tomorrow morning? Write it in the comments below. Even if it's just I will make my bed, write it down. Let's start your chain of wins today. Sleep well, stay disciplined, and stay focused. I will see you in our next story. Goodbye from the English Oasis.